hat and becoming a moderator. So it's my pleasure to introduce the next speaker, Dr. and Professor Kumar. He's a consultant and head of Department of Emergency Medicine, Deputy Head of Clinical Operations, Dr. Mehta's Multi-Specialty Hospital, and he's a National Joint Secretary of the Society of Emergency Medicine in India. He's course director of multiple programs. He's a member of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine and Masters in Emergency Medicine. So please welcome him to the board. He will be talking about double-edged knife contrast medium in the emergency department. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, dear chairpersons, and it's my pleasure to be here. This is my sixth visit to Turkey, and it's always wonderful to come and meet all great friends here. And my talk for today is going to be on contrast medium, and when Dr. Errol gave me this topic, I clearly know what he wanted me to speak on. He wanted me to speak on, forget about all the other investigations, speak on ultrasound, right, because that's his passion. Anyway, so let's go ahead and see contrast medium use in ER. I'm sure all of you sitting here and all of us sitting here use a lot of contrast every day in and day out. Before we go on to the main talk, let's slightly understand what is this contrast medium, what does it actually mean. Contrast mediums, and then the use of contrast mediums in an emergency department, and then let's see what are the risks involved by using contrast mediums in an emergency department, some of the complications associated with contrast mediums, and how do you mitigate those complications. This is going to be our agenda for today. Right, so what is a contrast medium? The first sentence or the definition of a contrast medium is very important for us to understand. These are used to supplement the capabilities of various imaging modalities. Whenever we use this word supplement, that always means there is an alternative available. So this is very important for us to understand that whenever possible, try to avoid a supplement which is a contrast. I'll tell you why in the forthcoming slides. Basically, there is oral contrast, IV contrast. For the sake of today's presentation, we will only stick to IV contrast. These contrasts are basically iodine based. They could be ionic and non-ionic, either high, low or iso-osmolar. This osmolarity is very important because most of the trouble because of this contrast medium is because of the osmolarity. So we will come to that later in our forthcoming slides. And the recent ones, we use a lot of non-ionic, iso or low osmolar. These are the recent contrast mediums which we use to reduce complications. And MRI scans, there was a question to the previous speaker on MRI use. They're currently with MRI we use a lot of gadolinium based contrast. So this helps in reducing the complications associated with the contrast medium. Right. So what are the indications of use of contrast? There is a lot of controversies in use of contrast medium, whether we should use contrast in an emergency department or whether we should pick up a different kind of imaging modality or a higher imaging modality. There are a lot of papers supporting and opposing. So usually we prefer IV and oral in abdominal CT, in case of an uncomplicated appendicitis, diverticulosis, nephrolithiasis, mesenteric ischemia, portal vein thrombosis, any brain CAs, bowel obstructions, and these are some of the indications which we use contrast media in emergency department, which most of us know. And for contrast in CT, brain basically to delineate tumors, CVT, carotid and vertebral artery dissections, and any aneurysmal bleeds. And there are contrast enhanced ultrasonographies. I'm not sure how many of you still use that. This is basically used for solid organ injuries, bleeding hematomas, and abdominal aortic aneurysms. So these are some of the common indications which we use contrast in an emergency department. But there are a lot of controversies surrounding it, whether we should be really using a contrast medium to diagnose all this, or shall we use a simpler medium like in say an ultrasound, or whether you should go for an MRI. So, but that's not the context of our study. What is the problem of using a contrast medium in an emergency department? What are we worried about? Basically, when you look at an emergency department, what are the types of patients who walk in? This is a new patient who walks into your emergency department. Basically, he needs a radiological investigation with a contrast. You have no idea about this patient before. You want to assess whether is it risk for him to develop any kind of a reaction to the contrast. So basically, you do a risk assessment for some. If somebody falls into the risk category, you need to decide what are the types of investigations you're going to do before you subject him to any kind of a contrast exposure. This is two. You will also have a set of patients who will come and tell you they have had an history of allergic reactions or complications to contrast before, but unfortunately you still have to do a contrast for them for various reasons. So this is the third group. So you've got a new patient who is coming, you've got to assess whether is he risky, is he in the risk group for developing any kind of an issues. You have a group which comes in and says, yes, I have a problem with contrast media before, but unfortunately you need to do a scan for him. And the third group is clearly somebody who has got high risk. So I'll talk about that a little later. So what is the problem with the contrast medium whenever we're talking about? Any contrast medium, we basically talk about only two things. One is a hypersensitivity to the contrast itself, which is very difficult to predict. And then everybody knows there is a renal injury which is associated with any contrast medium. The renal injury could be acute or this could be delayed. So let's talk about that a little more. And there are some non-renal complications, some of the important complications which we will talk about. But as I told you, these are iodine based. So whenever I talk about iodine, clearly there is a thyroid involvement here as well. So let's talk about that a little more in detail. Right. Who are these patients at risk? In other terms, who are the patients who walk into an emergency department who really need a creatinine levels before going in for a CT? So this is a common practice where we keep them all waiting to get their creat levels before you subject them for CT. Right? But do really everybody need a creatinine level before you subject them for a CT scan? That's what we need to think about. Right? Who are those people who are really at risk? That's where the history is very, very important. Anybody gives you a previous history of allergy, not just to allergy to contrast medium, but anybody who has got more allergy prone tendency, frequently comes in with an allergy for anything, be it for a footstep, be it for hay fever for example, they are at high risk for developing a contrast allergy as well. Anybody who has got an atopic tendency. Somebody who is severely dehydrated, they are more prone for renal injury, so you need to hydrate them well. Extremes of age, somebody who is less than 5 years of old or more than 60 years are clearly at high risk group, so clearly these are the populations where you need to screen their creats. Somebody who has got a serious illness and chronic debilitating, any kind of nephropathies, diabetic nephropathy for example, these are the people who are at very high risk. Those with anemia, anybody with co-medications, for example metformin, which usually impairs your renal excretion, and anybody with malignancies. Typically this is your high risk group, and this is exactly what you need to elicit from the history to see whether this patient needs a creat or not. A young healthy patient, say a 25-33-year-old, walks into the emergency department, you want to do a contrast for him, he doesn't fall into the risk group, do you really have to keep him waiting for a creat? That's a big question mark. There is no indications for him to actually get a creatinine before you subject him for a contrast CT. All you have to do is take some precautions. Right. So who are those people who are going to get creatinine pre-screening? These are the indications clearly. Those who have got history of anatomical variations in the kidney, like horseshoe kidney, those who have undergone renal surgeries before, those who are in renal endangering medications like be it NSAIDs, those who are in nephropathy prior, like diabetic nephropathy, hypertensive nephropathy, those who are in prior renal dialysis or malignancies, nephropathy associated chronic diseases, and drug interfering with renal excretions like metformin. So these are the people clearly you have to get a creatinine levels before you subject them for a contrast exposure. Right. Alright, so here is a patient who needs an urgent CT. He has got a known history of allergic reactions. Right. We're talking about adult patients here, not pediatrics. What is the best way to manage a contrast reaction? The best way is to avoid contrast in the first place. Look at an alternative options if available, either an MRI or an ultrasound scan which can give you an equal sensitivity and specificity on those diagnoses. Try to prefer that. Try to avoid contrast medium. But unfortunately, if you cannot, these are the medications which you will prefer before subjecting them for CT scan. Before subjecting them for contrast exposure, be it MRI or CT, where usually you give steroids, hydrocortisone 50 mg IV every 4th hour until the procedure is complete, plus diphenhydramine 50 mg per oral or 25 mg IV 1 hour prior to the procedure. If allergy or contraindication to steroids, it's still possible because these are the people who have atopic tendencies. Pre-medicate with diphenhydramine 50 mg per oral or 25 mg IV 30 to 60 minutes prior to the procedure. So these are the people who needs pre-medication before subjected to CT. Right? What is the problem with contrast media? Why are we worried about renal injuries? What is the mechanism behind this renal injury? What is the problem statement? This is the osmolarity, as I briefed you some time back. There is an ionized contrast media was postulated to cause this extracellular fluid shift in the renal cells, leading to the cell rehydration, and there is increased intracellular fluid viscosity, which precipitates the cellular dysfunction. This is exactly the mechanism behind renal injuries in use of contrast. So, because of the high osmolarity of the contrast media. So how do we mitigate this? So ensure that the patient is well hydrated. I'm not talking about somebody who's already in a renal failure. This is about a normal patient who's at high risk group. Clearly make sure you hydrate them well, the urine output is adequate. And you can also give them soda bicarb infusion. I know there's a lot of practice of giving soda bicarb in NAC, theophylline, statins, diuretics to mitigate this, but clearly there is no studies which shows benefit over each other. As long as you hydrate the patient well and maintain good adequate urine output, you don't require any of the other agents like soda bicarbonate or NAC to prevent renal injuries, right? So when you come to the non-renal injuries, so what are the possible complications you might get? You might get mild, moderate and severe symptoms. Like mild symptoms might range anywhere from anxiety, chills, cough, dizziness, flushing, headache, itching, nasal stuffiness. The moderate symptoms, the bronchospasm, wheezing, hypotension, dyspnea, laryngeal edema, severe anaphylaxis. And the severe symptoms includes convulsion, arrhythmias and profound laryngeal edema as well. So how do you manage any mild symptoms which originate with the use of contrast media? Clearly, you use diphenhydramine 25 milligrams either as per oral, IM or IV route, and you might repeat or increase the dose up to 50 milligram. And hydrocortisone steroids, usually 100 milligrams IV push over a minute, and adrenaline in case you think the patient is landing up in severe anaphylaxis and IM. That's a standard treatment for any anaphylaxis as such. If it's a moderate symptoms, remember the patient might exhibit both sympathetic as well as parasympathetic symptoms as well. If there is a vagal involvement, clearly the patient might show bradycardia. So in these patients, you actually require atropine. And anybody with hypotension and tachycardia, so clearly it's an anaphylactic kind of reaction. So put them on adrenaline IM. And anybody with a respiratory distress, clearly beta-2 agonist, and as well as so anybody can even develop seizures. So lorazepam is the standard treatment of choice. So there is a possibility of rebound for any of these patients to develop allergic or atopic reactions after the use of contrast media. Usually happens about 6 to 12 hours later. So how do you mitigate that? Usually we use steroids, either hydrocortisone or methylprednisolone, 50 milligram 1 to 2 minutes every 6 hours, or methylprednisolone 40 milligram every 1 to 2 minutes for next 6 hours. So this is how to prevent rebound. So what are the renal immediate injuries, which is contrast-induced acute kidney injury? We call it as the recent terminology CIAKA. So this is abrupt deterioration in kidney function manifested by an increase in serum creatinine level with or without a reduced urine output. So it clearly states that you don't have to have a reduced urine output. Your creatinine levels is a single identification factor for the involvement of kidney damage in case of a contrast. And any contrast which is used intra-arterially clearly has got more risk when compared to an intravenous contrast to develop renal injuries or acute kidney injuries. Right, so how do you measure that? So there's a diagnostic criteria for contrast media induced acute kidney injury. When the absolute serum creatinine increase is greater than or equal to 3 milligram per deciliter, it's clearly because of the contrast, and increase in the percentage of creatinine before and after the study is more than 50%, clearly this is because of the contrast. And if the urine output reduced to less than or equal to 0.5 ml per kg for at least 6 hours, you can think about contrast-induced acute kidney injury. And as I briefed you earlier, clearly urine output is not a clear indicator for contrast-induced nephropathy. Always think about the first, which is in creatinine. So always a creatinine value more than 3 or more than 50% increase from the previous value. If you could remember these two, that would be great. Right. So there are certain delayed renal complications as well, which not many of us think about or deal with this as this is beyond the scope of EM. Clearly there is a nephrogenic systemic fibrosis which happens, especially with gadolinium-based scans. Right. This is extremely fatal, and the most complicated issue in this is you cannot identify it through any of the scans or any of the investigations. So clearly these are the patients who undergo contrast scans, and after 2 or 3 days or about 4 days, you clearly see them deteriorating and in a cardiac arrest, and you are sometimes attributing that to the primary illness. But there is a reason, which is nephrogenic systemic fibrosis, which is a result of a contrast-induced nephropathy, so which might kill the patient as well. So you may think about this condition. Not many of these come across regularly. So when I talk about delayed complications of a contrast media, there are clearly non-renal complications, because most of your renal complications are immediate. It will manifest within 6 hours. And there are some delayed complications like thyroid complications, which may happen to 1 week post-use of contrast. Iodine-provoked thyroid functions, disrupt autoregulation, so hyperthyroid kind of symptoms, high risk of hyperthyroid status patients. So that we need to understand. So in general, our take-home message is, how do you have safe renal practices? Anybody with patients with a serum creatinine more than 2 grams is clearly at risk. Try to look at an alternate treatment modality for these patients. Ensure that they get adequately hydrated before you put them onto the contrast. So anybody who has got a creatinine borderline, hydrate them. even before hydrating them, think about any alternative modalities, and if you cannot, then you subject them for contrast medium, don't put them on contrast directly. Somebody who has got a renal disease, but you still produce urine, consider alternative, do not put them on contrast directly. If you don't have any other alternative, use the lowest possible dose of contrast as possible. Use intermediate or low or smaller and or low risk gadolinium based contrast media. Clearly nowadays there is non-ionic and low or smaller contrast mediums available, so your radiologist will suggest you that. So try to use those, and that's followed by a prompt dialysis. In case if the patient is already an end-stage renal disease patient who makes no urine on full-time dialysis, you really don't have to worry because there's no renal tissue for you to damage further, so you can think about using the full dose of contrast. So these are the three. So this is my take-home message for today, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saravanan, for this excellent speech. I will take your questions for you because you will leave early today. And is there any question for this topic? Or any input? No question. Thank you.
Thank you so
very
much.
much. Have a nice day. Now, as a third speaker, I want to introduce Dr. Mustafa Kesap from Antalya Research and Training Hospital, and he will talk about the perspectives of abdominal computerized tomography.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mustafa Keşap, living and working in Antalya City Center, Training and Research Hospital. My speech is about abdominality today, personal pitfalls and advantage and disadvantage. Also, I want to speak about why we are using. I will give you some epidemiological features of the CT and what is the indications, advantage and disadvantage, my objectives, and end of the presentation I will speak about the future of the abdominal CT and some of the special groups I want to explain to you today. And there are some numbers on the presentation, as you see that approximately 20 years the CT or total CT is growing almost 10 times, but at this period for 20 years just the patient flow is approximately 5 times is growing. So that's why we are using abdominal CT in our department so spread. And in Turkey, just 11 million people, 11 million CT scan in all of our hospitals we are using also in Turkey. These of them, the CTs, when you look to the abdominal CT is 10 times more, according to the others. The other is thorax CT is 5 times much more. And 25% CT is, we are evaluating our emergency department. So we are using spread also. And there was a meta-analysis also here. We are using approximately for adult people 17% around of, for children 5% around of, and for the older people almost 1 over the 4 people. For older people we are using CT in any way. That was huge numbers also. And which indications we are using, especially first of all lower quadrant pain. First of all, the second one is flank pain. The third one is abdominal, non-specific abdominal pain, and the fourth one, we are using left side of the abdominal pain. We are using in our departments, my friends. Why is the increasing of the CT? Because CT is available everywhere, in almost resuscitation room. When you go to any hospital in Turkey, in all of the world, machine was so spread, machine was so located, all of the hospitals almost. And in Turkey, for example, if you are working outside of the city centers, you can find easily much more than ultrasound or the other modalities. I mean, you are taking to the CT, you are sending with telemedicine Ankara or Istanbul center. There was a radiologist on the table and he getting the comments, so sent you to back 1 hour, 2 hours later. It's so easy for the clinician, so especially general practitioner in our rural area in Turkey. So we are reaching to the CTs much more easy to other modalities. And then another one is for Turkey, for example. We are so crowded emergency departments. We are so many patients flow we have. So we are getting to we are afraid of all of us, afraid of the malpractice. So sometimes we have to make defensive medical decisions. And What was so we have also some procedural advantage. We have what was omit. First of all, non-dependent to the person on the same as ultrasound and the second one, abdominal gases or adipose tissue sometimes not connected to image quality. And especially in trauma patients, we have visualization of the retroperitoneal area, so excellent. So some of the new technologies is improve our image quality. Multiplanar reconstruction also transfers sagittal coronal and multi-detector machines available all over the world. So as on the picture, as you see, we are using, and especially life-threatening indications, we are using these modalities. I mean, abdominal aortic aneurysm, thoracoabdominal dissection, intraabdominal hemorrhagia, penetrant abdominal trauma, mesenteric ischemia, blah, blah, blah. And then the others, mostly, especially in children, for diagnosis, for differential diagnosis, appendicitis, renal stones, especially adult people, hernia, we are using these indications of the abdominal CT on ED. Plus fever plus no surgery or yes surgery, and the other one, abdominal pain or plus neutropenia. All of them is appropriate modalities of the evaluation, it says to the American College of Radiology. And also, maybe the most important one is the fourth variant, non-localized abdominal pain, and none other, any specialty. I mean, most of the people, same as like this position, and it suggests to us CT abdominal pelvis with IV contrast, usually appropriate. CT abdominal pelvis without IV contrast, usually appropriate also, and also suggests to us MRI modalities. And also, my friend, how was diagnostic efficiency? Why we love so much abdominal CT for evaluation of our people? Because it changed our management of the patients. I mean, approximately 50% to admitting rates to changing our diagnosis. So we are levels. You see some of the papers here, approximately 50% changing to the diagnosis, 25% changing to the surgical plans. Also, there was a review article also, you saw that there was a changed modalities also. You see that here, at this column, you saw that almost 40% to 60% changing our management of the patients. So we are using so much, so we are loving abdominality in our departments. And also, we are using penetrant abdominal trauma. Also, it says to us, FAST plus selective cases of the abdominality is gold standard also. Especially trauma people, it suggests to us also gold standard. Also from Turkey, a paper, CT guided tractography also, we evaluate some of the penetrant abdominal trauma, much more easy, much more excellent type of the management. And on the summary of the abdominal CT, it provides more accurate diagnosis to us, cost-effective, non-personal dependent, fast, and most of the gold standard modality. And then what was the disadvantage of the abdominal CT? First, radiation exposure. Approximately 10 millisievert, according to your machines, approximately 10 millisievert radiation exposure is one of after the one of abdominal CT. I am speaking about the adult people and speak later on children. And then 10 millisievert, what it means, I will try to explain to you. And if you get 100 millisievert effective radiation dose, 100,000 people, one of them is getting triggering to the solid cancer. So, especially if you are using on brain, you are approximately, especially in children, 2 or 3 times leukemia and glioblastoma, you are triggering also. So, for example, in 1945, after the Second World War, who survived to the Japan, they get approximately 50 or 60 millisievert who survived. So, if you get 5 or 6 abdominal CT on your life, you are getting to your survival of the Second World War equal to your radiation exposure. Also, this picture is, I think, maybe on your brain today because of risk is almost small. As you see here, we speak about 10 millisievert, but after around of 0.2 to 0.3 around of the percent, we coming to the malignancy of the due to abdominality. But if you are getting 100 and maybe 150 millisievert radiations, you are getting to the much more radiation also, my friend. And let me continue. Some of the mechanisms, some of the recommendation to reduce to the effect of the radiation, as mostly is speaking on it, to reduce to the dose of CT. I mean, most of the CT machine is using 120 kilowatt energy level of the radiation. So if you reduce this energy 100 or maybe it's 80, it will be much less radiation exposure to the people. So some of the papers, for example, they reduce to the level of the energy 120 to the 100 approximately radiation dose half, almost 5.7. So when you look at the pictures, one of them is the left side of them, there was acute pyelonephritis, older people. The right one, left one is the 120, the other one 100. As you see that there is almost same image quality. And the other one is the right side of you. There was acute appendicitis in young people. So image quality doesn't change, and also statistically it doesn't change more. And another paper here, it's about the cancer people. They reduced to the energy level of the 80 kilowatt of the radiation exposure. Also, there is no any differences, any bad quality of the image. They didn't provide it. So, especially in children, reduced dose appendicitis, there is a sensitivity and specificity also high. So, median dose of the reduced dose was approximately 2 millisievert. That was excellent. Because we are in nature, we are just 3 millisievert radiation we are taking every year, our natural environment. So this is so 1.8 is so rare, so little point of the radiation exposure. Some of the another mechanism, for example, some of the researchers bringing together ALARA as well as reasonably achievable methods, they are reducing to all of the radiation exposure. So if you use this kind of methodological approach to the patients, approximately 70%, 65% radiation exposure you are reducing. So another one is multidisciplinary European low-dose initiative strategic research agenda for low-dose radiation risk research. They are European countries collecting together and they are trying to reduce to the energy level of the machines for CT machines. And the other one, we have to use contrast or non-contrast. Before the speaker, to me, little bit focused on these topics, and we have to do, first of all, there is no need to use oral contrast, my friend, in ED. So we are using the vascular abnormalities especially, and infarctions, abscess, we are using, but allergic reaction and contrast nephropathy, we are seeing our patients. And as you see here on the second references, the elimination of oral contrast did not lead to any misdiagnosis because time-consuming. You see here there was a colitis people. On the left picture, there is no oral contrast. On the right one is the oral contrast. There was no image quality different each other. So there was a meta-analysis, also review article. Sorry, as you see here. On 2014, there was a round of almost 3,000 people. Just one people changed. They didn't use to the oral contrast, so there is no need to use oral contrast. Also, when you use oral contrast, your patient stay after the emergency department is so long time because you need more time. Nephrotoxicity is another trouble for the abdominality. If you are normal people before your you have no renal failure, your risk is maybe 10%. But if you are renal impairment before, your risk is go up 30% around of. I found on the literature there was a meta-analysis on American College of Annals of Emergency Medicine last year. There was a round of 28 papers they collected. And around of 100,000, more than 100,000 people, they meta-analyzed, and there is no risk, there is no any difference between to use oral contrast, to use contrast or not non-contrast CT. So maybe, but this is a little bit confusion topic, so I will not speak more on it. And also, one of them is the other disadvantage of the CT, incidental. You are getting abdominal CT or anywhere, you are finding any findings, mass, anything, abnormalities like this. So we defined that incidentoloma, approximately 80%, 85%, these findings, incidental findings is benign, but your plan is changing. I mean, maybe 10%, 11% your patient, management of your patient is changing. So that was another trouble for abdominal CTs, my friend. And also, it's the same as with the children. It's not just adult people. You are finding in children also maybe 30% around of the you are finding, but children's lesion is much more benign also, my friend. Also, I want to speak a little bit special ages group for pediatric people. It's changing to the using, for example, in Japan, they are using 3%, in USA 11%, in Turkey, I don't know the exact number. So, most of them is trunk, but it's cranium and the trunk, also abdomen. Why is the radiation is sensitive for the children? Because their life of expectancy is so high. So if you meet to the early of their life with the radiation, they are getting to the proliferating cell is affecting their sensitive of the radiation is affected their more dividing proliferative cells. So becoming solid cancers also, my friend. And also especially teenager group, ladies, for girls, their throat and their breast tissue is so sensitive for radiation exposure. So there was another paper declares here, a single radiation exposure in 1-year-old child to be 1 in 550 following an abdominal CT and 1 in 1,500 following a brain CT. And it's a huge number also. But I will show you another presentation. Also, this picture shows to us if you meet on your life, in the beginning of your life, your risk is so much. For female, and female is more sensitive according to the man's also, my friend. Another topics, we are using, especially they look to the especially trauma center. You are a children, you go to the children's hospital, and the children, you go there, general hospital. And the second hand, you go to the pediatric hospital or pediatric trauma center. In general hospital, approximately 4.5 times, the radiation is, they are using to use the much more eager to use the CT. So they are using the less abdominal CT. So also trauma centers, as you see here, these are all these papers show to us general hospital or non-academic hospitals or non-trauma centers provide more radiation to our children. So it's a little bit maybe attention at this point also, in my opinion. So what about geriatric people? Geriatric people is almost our maybe 20-25% nowadays our patients. So their complaint is chest pain, shortness of breath, and then third one is abdominal pain. And their abdominal pain is management is so difficult sometimes, not the same as younger people. So they are changing their admitted rate is high, their surgical operation rate is high. So their mortality is also after the 8 years, they almost go to the 40%, 50%. So we have to use also gold standard for geriatric people. Pregnancy doesn't recommend the guidelines any using to the CT, but there was just one paper I bring to you. It says to us, perform MRI. If you doesn't find, you can use it, but there is no any recommendation, much more recommendation. Also one paper, they used the reduced dose of the abdominal CT for pregnant people. It doesn't suggest, but if you doesn't find the MRI, you can use the safe class, short class, but this is just one research also. We cannot say that this is general rules. And end of my topic, I just want to give to you new things. Do you have any idea artificial intelligence? As you know, we are using, especially last year, it was using artificial intelligence of interpretation of the CTs and MRI findings. So, as you see here, in 2015, 2016, 2017, almost every year 30% this paper is growing up. So machine learning, big data, automated report generation, multimodality image analyzers, publicly available data sets and competitive challenges is coming up to us. Maybe three congress later we will speak, we will compare to which one is to be radiologist or artificial intelligence, which maybe we will speak about on it. I will show you another papers about on it. And also progress in fully automated abdominal CT interpretation, and the sensitivity, specificity is so high, my friend. I will show you also. And these are World Journal of Gastroenterology. They focus just liver of the finding. They comment to the artificial intelligence, comment to the liver pathologies, and otherwise the radiologist make comments. So there was equal each other. And last topics about these topics and future of artificial intelligence for abdominal CT. There was almost acute findings they detect, and also same as autopilots in aircraft, same as auto drivers in our cars, and same as, but the comment all to the people now, maybe in the future we will speak much more difference. And summary of my presentation is management of patients. We have to use universal algorithms, good medical practice. Under the MRI presentation from our guest from Saudi Arabia showed good pictures. One of the man is footing two chair, more no before history, no physical examination, no laboratory. It goes to the directly CT or MRI. Same as we have to do our job is good medical practice. No amount of radiation should be considered absolutely safe. And special age group, it needs more attention, especially in children. You have to be pleased to think device, and that. Some emergency situation, some life-threatening situation, because we are ER docs, so higher benefits than harm in ED, especially life-threatening conditions we have to be aware of. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you for this presentation, Dr. Kesap. I will take questions after the end of panel for you, because we have a little bit delayed. Now the next speaker is me. It's myself. Yes. Good morning again. And we have changed the program a little bit because some of the speakers should go earlier than expected. So I take the last presentation, last rank. I am professor of emergency medicine, and my name is Erol Ünler. Most of them know me, but I will briefly introduce myself. In order to not know me very well, I am one of the board member of İBET Society, Emergency Physician Association of Turkey, and I am working with the Basar Cander, and I am the president of Soros School International Network, also the head of the imaging section of İBET Society. And today's topic is stethoscope or ultrasound. Most of you know me as an ultrasound face of the Turkey, and nationally and internationally. And I will discuss which is better in this presentation. And my lecture wrote like that. First we will begin with the history, and after that we will go with the physical examination. which is composed of inspection, percussion, palpation, and the use of sound waves, either by your ear or by your eye. And we will go over with the diagnosis and management, and at the end, we will see the result of our patients. These steps is totally represent our clinical practice. This is the standard of medicine. And we are starting from the history. And you know this Chiron is the teacher of the several pupils, several students, including Apollo. Apollo was the father of healing, was the initiator of healing, and in Greek mythology. And don't be scared, because I will not talk about the history so long. I will pass very quick. And also, the Asclepion was one of the pupils of Chiron. And it is called the god of the medicine, father of the medicine in the Greek mythology. And after that, after this guy, we see the Imhotep. Imhotep comes from the Egyptian land and was one of the first doctors in the Egyptian countries. He was also an architecture and also a doctor. And this is the Lachman physician from Anatolian land, from our land. And now we came to real history. Real history begins with Kos Island and also the Aegean part of the Turkey. Hippocrates comes from the Kos Island, and the Galenus comes from the Aegean part of the Turkey. These two guys are very important for the medical practice, because the Hippocrates was used to do external inspection. This is the first step of physical examination. And he was the father of external inspection. And the Galenus actually was the father of internal inspection. I think this is the first declaration of this terminology, internal inspection, because the Galenus did the first dissection of animals to see the internal organs. Okay? So now we have two historical pathways, one of them for external inspection and the other for internal inspection of the anatomical organs. And we see the Umbrager for investing the percussion in the physical examination steps. And now we see the Laennec. We should send ourselves to the Laennec, who is the inventor of the modern stethoscope in the medical history. And also, on the internal inspection pathway, we see a very important doctor, William Harvey, who did the first anatomical dissection of human body, not animal, human body. So internal inspection actually begins after Galenus with the, William Harvey. Now, we are here with our modern stethoscopes, modern ultrasound machines, and also we should remember this doctor, Dr. Donald. In the history, he was the first performer of ultrasound for a pregnant patient in the diagnostic medicine. So I'm very appreciative for this guy. And after the history, we see that we are the champion. We are the specialization group who use ultrasound most frequently in the emergency department, in the critical care patient. I didn't say like that. The literature says like that. because most of us use ultrasound in unstable patients over than 95%. And we are the champions. And we feel very strong and very confident among the other physicians, internal medicine, critical care physicians, and among other specialists. And when we look at the timeline of the ultrasound in the history, we see the first published scientific literatures in the era of trauma come from the focused assessment of sonography of trauma in the early 1990s. And when we look at the timeline from the beginning up to now, the steps of ultrasound in the emergency department, we see that it begins from 1970s and ends up to now. And they built a lot of guidelines, a lot of pathways, FAST protocols, FAST protocols, FOS protocols, FATE protocols, ACEs, RUSH protocols, a lot of protocols. And I cannot pass this slide without mentioning Sono School, because I am the president of Sono School and I should advertise it. I have only conflict of interest with Sono School and Pipette Society. And what this picture represents, this picture represents that one diagnostic test is valuable when the agreement is okay. And it must not change from physician to physician. If this is the situation for a diagnostic test, this test is excellent. And we call this agreement. And this agreement is calculated in medicine with the kappa value. Inter-rater variability, one of the way to calculate this value. And we see the diagnostic accuracies of the tests. And when we check the diagnostic accuracies of physical examination in different situations, we see that very low agreement. So physical examination by itself has very low agreement, changing between the 0.4 and 0.7 for a lot of situation, a lot of case, except at the extremes. If your patient has a unstable vital signs, your agreement of physical examination goes up to over 0.7. It is the same situation with the other parts, for the other parts of the body and diseases. It is the same. So physical examination, not so accurate. And it has low agreement. So after this brief information, we can go with the other steps of physical examination. And we should start with the palpation. We use most commonly the palpation for our unstable patient, for our emergent patient. And for the pulse check, the first step. And we see from the literature that we have a very low sensitivity and low specificity for pulse check and high inter-rater variability, low kappa values. And in the literature, we see that very low sensitivity for pulse check with our hands. Even the specificity is lower than the sensitivity, up to 60%. And why this is the situation? Because your patient may be obese, your patient may be big, you have a big body mass index, and it can decrease your sensitivity for pulse check and specificity. But it is the same for ultrasound patient also. If your patient is obese and big, you have a low sensitivity and specificity for this pulse check. But in any case, POCUS is much more sensitive and reliable compared to the hands of a physician. Also, we can use our ultrasound machine for palpation and for abdominal pain pathologies or abdominal diseases, such as right lower quadrant pain or right upper quadrant pain. And when we check the literature, we see that if you find a sonographic burning sign with your probe, you increase your diagnostic accuracy for diagnosing the acute appendicitis. Also, it is the same for diagnosing acute cholecystitis. If you find a sonographic Murphy sign in your patient, you increased your diagnostic chance of acute cholecystitis in your patient. So we can use our ultrasound probes instead of your hands, physician hands. Also, we can use our ultrasound machine for auscultation steps of physical examination. How? For example, to determine the correct location of double lumen endotracheal tube with a high accuracy over than 8% compared to the stethoscope. Stethoscope has an accuracy of 60%. Also, we can use our ultrasound for determining the one lumen endotracheal tube. And we see that with a high sensitivity and specificity with ultrasound, over than 90% comparing to the stethoscope, which is approximately 60%. And also we can use our ultrasound machine for diagnosing pneumonia of the patient. Here we have conducted a study in 2011 to diagnose the community-acquired pneumonia with our team, and we have compared the ultrasound, chest X-ray, and tomography together, diagnostic accuracies. And we see that, we concluded that diagnostic accuracy of ultrasound was approximately 90% with a high diagnostic accuracy. Also, we can use our ultrasound machine instead of stethoscope in the heart evaluation. This literature is very important because as emergency physician, we have used to do ultrasound in unstable patients. But they did this study in stable patients. And the physicians showed that if you do your point of care ultrasound on stable patients admitted to emergency room, you find new information in 1/3 of your patient and change your management decisions. And summary, you should do ultrasound, point of care ultrasound to the cardiac patients, not only for unstable, but also for your stable patients, routinely. Okay? So, we can also use our ultrasound in auscultation step for diagnosing the abdominal pathology. Again, we have conducted a study for small bowel obstruction with our team, and we see that if we use ultrasound, we can correctly diagnose our small bowel obstruction with a high accuracy with a kappa value of 0.8. So after percussion, palpation, auscultation step, the next step is the diagnosing and management step of your patient. And we can use our ultrasound machine in this area in a lot of application. For example, pneumonia, diagnosis of pneumonia, low ejection fraction, RV enlargement, pericardial effusion, wall motion abnormality, and also RV pressure overload. So Even we can use our ultrasound machine to differentiate our shock types, our patients' shock types. Hypovolemic, cardiogenic, obstructive, and distributive shock, with a high agreement, of course, with a high agreement over than 0.8. Also, we can diagnose a lot of cardiac pathologies with our ultrasound probe, with a high sensitivity and specificity percentages. And now, after this, a lot of plenty of scientific literature. There are a lot of questions. And where am I? Should I need a stethoscope? Should I use ultrasound instead of stethoscope? Should I use my eyes instead of stethoscope? Should I change the archaic steps of physical examination? This is the question. So this is the study of our team again. And the name is like that, stethoscope versus point of care ultrasound in the differential diagnosis of dyspnea. This is an important literature because this was a randomized, double-blinded study. And we divided physician group into two. We give one group of physicians a stethoscope, the other group used ultrasound in the physical examination steps for dyspneic patient. At the end, we have compared the diagnostic accuracies of ultrasound and stethoscope in the physical examination steps. And although we have seen a trend for the side of ultrasound, although we see that ultrasound use is better than the stethoscope use in diagnostic accuracy, after controlling the results carefully, we see that there was no statistically significant difference between ultrasound and stethoscope use. So the result is that, although some authors argue that it is time to abandon the archaic tool of the past century stethoscope, although I am an experienced ultrasound user and lover, I personally believe that it is too early to discontinue the use of stethoscope in physical examination. Okay? And what should I do? Give me the money, show me the money. I just need the main ideas. So, according to my point of view and my clinical experience, I should advise you that after taking the history, after taking a clear history, you should use your eyes with external inspection and also with your probe, internal inspection. Okay? This is the first step of physical examination. And after this, you have to use your hands for percussion and palpation. Also, you have to use your probe for palpation. Okay? This is the second step. So you should integrate every step, your ultrasound machine, to every step of physical examination. And when you come to auscultation, you should use your stethoscope and also you should use your probe in this step also. And after that, you should diagnose your patient with combination of history, ultrasound and stethoscope together and diagnose your patient. And if you need, you can change your management decision and decide what you will do your patient. So you should integrate ultrasound in every step to physical examination, and please don't leave your stethoscope even in this section. So this was the end of my lecture. Is there any questions? Is there any questions and collaboration? Thank you very much. Is there any question for the last speaker, Mustafa Kesapli, abdominal tomography?
the last moderator chairing in this beautiful conference, and I would like to inform you that we changed just a little bit the program. I'm waiting for the attendant. He should come now, so we can start not to get late. And we changed the program, so the first speaker will be Dr. Harun Güneş from the Dutch University, and he's an associate professor. And thank you, doctor, because he's got a plane to catch, so we fully understand that. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I am Harun Güneş of Dutch University School of Medicine, Department of Emergency Medicine. I am going to talk about journals and their expectations during the following 20 minutes. Our plan is as follows. First, we will start with background of the subject, and then continue with how to choose a journal and what journal editors want. Then features of a high-quality scientific paper. Later, peer review process, and we will finish with take-home messages. Let's start. I think we should look up from our own window because I think what the journals expect us to do actually equals what do we need to do. So let's look up from our own window. There are approximately 30,000 scholarly peer-reviewed journals in the world, and they collectively publish about 2 million articles per year. The Philosophical Transactions is the first scientific article. It was first published in 1665, and the scientific article has become the only way science is systematically represented in the world. At the beginning, it had not been important where you published, but Ben Levin changed everything in 1974. He was the editor of Cell. He prized long, rigorous papers that answered big questions and rejected far more papers than he published. Then suddenly, where you published became immensely important. Most prestigious scientists have sent their papers to Cell, and other editors took a similar approach to replicate Cell's success. Then the publishers adopted a new metric called impact factor. It was actually invented in 1960s. The New Look journals shot to the top of the rankings, and scientists who published in high-impact journals were rewarded with jobs and funding. So in general, journals prize new and spectacular results, and scientists waste approximately 15 million person-hours on unpublished submissions to scientific journals every year. Publishing is the expression of our work. A good idea, a conversation or correspondence, even from the most brilliant person in the world, doesn't count for anything unless you have it published, as Neil Young of the NIH says. So, publishing your results is necessary to validate them and share your work with the scientific community. And the academic journal is still the most robust method of publishing. However, we have some questions at this point, such as which journal should you publish in? Do you need to bother with a cover letter? Or how do you respond to reviewers, and so on? Here we have an important rule to remember. You should select an appropriate journal, because submission to an unsuitable journal will result in instant rejection of the manuscript, even without sending it for peer review. Let's have a look at some factors to consider when choosing a journal. Instructions for authors is the first factor to be considered. The authors should visit the website of the candidate journal, and they read guidelines for authors carefully. The journal's target audience is also important. Is the study of interest to the readership of the journal should be considered before submitting the manuscript. And the topics the journal publishes is another parameter to be thought about. The aims and scope of the journal indicate the topic areas, and authors should have a look at the articles published by the journal already. This can provide significant tips whether to send to this journal or to select another one. The types of articles the journal publishes is also important. If you want to publish a case report or a review article, you should find out whether the journal publishes these type of articles. And length restrictions are also important. The number of words, tables or figures may be restricted by the journal, and you should consider these factors also. And reputation of the journal is of course an important factor. Impact factor remains the default method for determining the quality and reputation of the journal. Everyone wants to publish in a high impact journal, and high impact journals want to publish novel findings that have a major impact on the field. So we should be honest about the quality of our own work, and we should place our work on the novelty, impact and priority scales, and we should objectively consider how significant our results are for our community, for our field and for the wider science. We continue with what the journal editors want. Journal editors evaluate all manuscripts that are submitted to their journal, and they select those which they consider to be suitable for the journal and send them for peer review. And finally, they consider peer reviewers' advice to make a final decision. They are busy and they usually have to make an initial decision on the suitability of a paper quickly. They usually look at the cover letter, abstract, conclusion and references, and they decide whether the submission is in scope for the journal and of sufficient impact. They aim to publish good quality science, which has enduring conclusions that withstand careful scrutiny and validation, and that has an impact on the scientific and medical community. Key elements here are novelty and the potential for stimulating further discussion and research. So high quality research must be performed. It is also necessary to produce a high quality scientific paper. When doing a good research, you should first select a topic, and when setting out to research a particular topic, you should first read the literature and master what has already been completed previously. Otherwise, you may find yourself trying to reinvent the wheel. You should also formulate an important research question. The research question has to stem from a clinically important topic that has a significant disease burden. And you should also choose a research active area. It's also important. And study design. The most important aspect of any research study is its design. All editors and reviewers look for the quality of the study design as the first parameter. So the design of the study is crucially important. We will continue with how to write a high quality scientific paper. The simple secret to successful writing is that you are telling a story. It must make sense. It must have a beginning, a middle, and then end with a take-home message. These are the key points. Most journals demand a rigid structure and ask authors to adhere to certain conventions, and the most common convention follows the format: introduction, methods, results, discussion, acknowledgements, references, tables, and figures. Accurate and clear expression of your thoughts and research information should be the primary goal of scientific writing, and good scientific writing demands clarity, brevity, and logic. You should write with a measure of formality using scientific language, and also we should avoid first-person language. Instead, we should write with third-person language. Tables and figures may be considered, also graphics, for the representation of data and important procedures. Tables should be able to stand alone and they should be completely understandable at a quick glance. It is another important rule to remember. We should absolutely avoid plagiarism and inadvertent lack of citations. Now we will continue with specific parts of a scientific paper. First, introduction and review of literature. This section should provide information regarding the necessity of the presented project by using past studies. A complete introduction should include significance of the topic, the information gap in the available literature, a literature review in support of the key questions, and subsequently developed purposes, objectives, and hypotheses. In the methods section, we should clearly describe the specific design of the study and the procedures performed. Sufficient detail should be provided so that an appropriately trained person will be able to replicate your experiments. In the results section, the only duty is to report your results neutrally, just as you found them. No comments and no other thing. Just report your results. In the discussion, all results must first be described, presented, and then discussed. Carefully discuss where your data is similar to or different from other published evidence, and this point is important, why this might be so. What was different in methods and analysis and what was similar, because it's not our only purpose to say we found out these and these and these and other studies found out these and these and these. Why was this difference present, or why was this similarity present is also important. And finally, conclusion sections. We should finish a concise 3 to 5 sentence conclusion paragraph. It is comprised of some final summative statements which reflect the flow and outcomes of the entire paper. A statement about potential changes in clinical practice or future research opportunities can be provided here. Of course, we know that it is not just a repetition of the results, but it is actually a final word. We can say final word. And once you have written your manuscript, get a colleague to read it and provide feedback on how manuscript flows. If necessary, rewrite it so it reads well and grabs the attention of the editor. For novice writers, it is more important. They should seek a reading mentor that will help them reread their submission. And again, before submitting the manuscript, we should evaluate it critically, and we should consider whether anything can be done better. And we should be sure about the manuscript follows the instructions for authors. All files are in the correct format and of the appropriate resolution and size, and the spelling and grammar are correct. And again, before submitting the manuscript, serious consideration has to be given to the title of the manuscript, the abstract, and the cover letter. Title is the first window for readers to look at your work, so you should select a title that catches their attention and makes them want to read further. And this title should also accurately describe the contents of your manuscript. And abstract is the second important part of the manuscript. Many readers and also editors will only read the abstract and determine if the remainder is worth reading. So an abstract has to be able to stand alone. And an abstract can answer the following questions. What was done? Why was it done? What was found? Why are these findings useful and important? And what is the take-home message? Cover letters are also important. We said Your aim is to sell your paper to the journal in cover letter, so you should take care to attract the editor's attention. As well as introducing your work to the editor, you should explain why the manuscript will be of interest to the journal's audience and why the editor would want to publish it. And all cover letters should include the following two sentences. The first one is, we confirm this manuscript has not been published elsewhere and is not under consideration by another journal. And the second sentence is, all authors have approved the manuscript and agree with its submission to the journal. These two sentences should be present in all cover letters. We continue with peer review process. We should keep in mind that revisions are part of the publication process and they help raise the quality of our manuscripts. So, forgive me, and peer reviewers are experts who volunteer their time to improve the journal manuscripts. They offer authors free advice. We should keep in mind these points. Of course, another important purpose of peer reviews is to make sure the papers published are of the right quality for the journal's aims. If you receive a major revised decision, what should you do? It means your manuscript has a chance, but it has still not yet been accepted for publication. So you should try to provide answers or data for all comments. And if you disagree with the reviewer's point of view, you should state your opinion clearly but politely. It's also important. You should be polite. You can take a reject decision. It's another possibility. Your manuscript can be rejected for many reasons, but these reasons can be divided into two as technical and editorial reasons. Technical reasons include incomplete data, poor analysis, inappropriate methodology, weak research motive, and inaccurate conclusions. And editorial reasons include out of scope for the journal or not enough of an advance or of enough impact for the journal. And ignored research ethics also can be a reason. Not following journal formatting requirements and lack of the necessary detail on the analysis and experiments, or lack of up-to-date references or high proportion of self-citations, other possible reasons for rejection, and poor language quality and difficult to follow logic or poorly presented data, and violation of publication ethics are also reasons for rejection of a manuscript. If you have a decision which states your manuscript is rejected, was rejected, what should you do? You should look at the comments carefully and fairly, and if you think the reviewer made a mistake on an important point and you can prove this, you could consider a rebuttal to the editor, but you should keep in mind that rebuttals are rarely successful. So the best action is to revise the manuscript and send the improved manuscript to a new journal. In conclusion, our take-home messages are: choose an important question, design a sound study with statistical power, perform the work with impeccable integrity and attention to detail, write an excellent manuscript, submit it to the right journal, and respond to reviewer comments fully. That's all I want to tell about this subject, and these are my references. Any questions or contributions?
Thank you. Do we have any comments in the audience? Thank you for your very kind presentation. I know you have a plane to catch. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to invite the second speaker, my colleague and General Secretary, Eric Revu, Research Method in Emergency Medicine.
this incredible meeting that you're organizing. It's better and better each year. It's a real pleasure to be here. And thank you to my friends to be here and the colleagues, because it's the last session. I don't have anything to declare, with the exception that it could be a new course for the road. So what kind of roads will it be? Let me show you. It could be these kind of roads. There's kind of games that will have some colleagues, and that's the family of all the colleagues. And thank you, Bashar, to organize in this way. So, who will be on the throne, you will see. Who knows Jon Snow? You know Jon Snow, okay. But not that Jon Snow. It's not that one. It's that one. That Jon Snow is famous. It's the father of epidemiology. He discovered the source of the cholera infection epidemic that had in London in 1854. And how he did that? Because he was a physician, he had a lot of patients with this kind of disease. And the thing he has done is just observing, putting a map, putting dots on the map, just to search where were the patients. And he made a fantastic job to know where were the patients. And he worked along to know where he had the feeling, he had a very good idea, he had the feeling that the source was a disease. The source of cholera disease was in the plain. And the source was where in a water pump that you can find in the center of London. And when he decided that, because he saw that a woman just put all the dirty trousers of this kid, he was sick, on the water and used this water pump. And that's the way, analyzing all the dots, he had found the source of this infection. So that just now was really impressive. The problem in emergency medicine, so it's very hard to make a research because we had to have a lot of patients. We had a lot of not very safe environments where people are quite aggressive. We do have a lot of patients. It's very hard to find doctors who have time to do that. And maybe sometime, with the exception maybe from Bashar, he's very active for that, but sometime in your hospital, it's very, very hard to develop a research program in your hospital. Funding is hard to find, many times. The ethical problems, it's very hard to have also. And we have some feeling that maybe emergency medicine research can benefit for the patient, not always, because it can help for development of the emergency medicine specialty in our country, because we have a research program very active. It could help for diagnosis, for new technology, for new devices, new biomarkers. For instance, we are doing a lot to analyze if it's a good way to treat the patient an acute MI or not. It can help for in the procedures for treatment of patients. It could be a very good way, like Jon Snow did, for prevention and to analyze the cause of a disease. The thing is, it could be harmful for the patient. It's a risk for the patient if you are not doing the good research. So we have to work on the research program in safety. So, what are the scientific methods to analyze research when you want to start a problem? First, you have to give the question, answer this quite very important question. What is the research question? What do we know? We have to know. What are the gaps about that? What is really important in the research program? What is the real issue of that? If we first start for these questions, we have to know that it's a process that we have to put in. And we don't know exactly when you are young how to do that. It's reasoning, intuition, somehow we have the feeling that, like Jon Snow had, I had the feeling that I can treat the patient, I can find the source of the disease. So let's apply this scientific method. You have to be prepared for the war. So you have a warm-up to do. First, choose the question to investigate. Identify a hypothesis to relate it to the question. Make some prediction. Why do you think if I put this question, what should be the results of that in that question? Make some small experiments in your emergency department to answer to that, and that's very important. Collect a lot of data for that. It's very important to have very strong data on our computers to analyze that. What are the results and the validity of the results? That's a very important way. Determine who will the result will support your first intuition in hypothesis. So how we can choose a research question? That's what is an unknown. What do we know? We know. Maybe we can update. You have seen the beautiful presentation from Roger about the use of adrenaline in the cardiac arrest. That's the thing we have been doing a lot for a long time. But maybe we need to update that. Are we sure that we have to use again adrenaline in the cardiac arrest? What are the other thing that you want to know? We have a lot of colleagues, they have a lot of ideas, beautiful ideas to implement in your emergency department. I've got an idea, I want to test a new device, I want to test a new biomarker. What is in common? Maybe your clinical experience, you have a very specific experience for that. We have seen in ECMO team that we have from different countries, we do use ECMO now in a pre-hospital system in France and in other countries. That could be very helpful to experiment new study. But it has to be a descriptive or analytic research. Define this population you are analyzing. Is that men, women, others, or all the patients, and we need to have those strong data first. So it's the example of the 10 top research priorities in emergency medicine. It's not a surprise, overcrowding is one of the best because that's the main problem that we have. Maybe a lot of colleagues in everywhere in the world are working on that. Maybe elderly patients, of course we do have a lot of elderly patients in our emergency departments, and we have to fix and to have a new concept, new organization, maybe asking for the others, all the country, how they fix the problem, how they can organize differently the MED with that. I'll let you see the other that have many research, other priorities in emergency medicine. So, usually we do clinical practice as we have doctors working, they have the feeling. You have the problem you have identified, and you look for literature for that, and you have the idea of this study, implement that, and give the question to your colleague. What do you think about this idea? What do you think it could be a good idea? For instance, we have, I've seen in my hospital, that's very near of my hospital, we have 50 meters away from the hospital, we have a railway station, and we have a main cardiac arrest, and we succeed to treat the cardiac arrest in that. Why that? Maybe you have a very good outlet for that, but maybe because we are trying to organize in a better way. So these kind of clinical practice will help you in your study, and you have to analyze and examine the outcome of the disease and what is the impact of that. Of course, we need to observe with the lab research or text to know how we can implement that, and asking for our colleagues. Some colleagues are really experts and help us, particularly for statistical data. So we could define the good research in these 5 points. It has to be feasible, interesting, novel, ethical, and relevant. These kind of points are really helpful when you want to implement a good question, research question. Because all the subject you need to have, do you have the resources? Are the data available? Is it an interesting? If you're working on a very boring research program, no one wants you to implement you because they won't want to help you. Is it novel? Maybe we have a lot of new concepts of research program. Is it relevant? Is it according to our scientific knowledge? Is it influence our clinical practice that we have seen? So, that three main points that we have to identify in a research question: variables, population, and the testability of the question. Do you think that the variables are just strong enough? They have the proper quantities to analyze that? Is that the variable vary from one to another one? Are they independent or dependent variables? Analyze the population. Is that the population exposed to the disease or not? Like we have seen with John Snow, it was an exposure to cholera disease. And the question is there a relationship between the exposure and the disease, and how will be the outcome? So the main population you have to focus on is writing on the patient, place, and time. And these data you have to implement in your program, research program to analyze. Here are the main study that we can use. The most tough research is the randomized control trial. The others are observational studies that we use a lot in the emergency department, cohort, case control, cross-sectional, and case studies. The main gold standard should be randomized clinical trial. There's three types of randomized control trial: parallel, crossover design, and factorial. The good system is to randomize the population of you want to study if you want to analyze very quickly, very strongly to have good data. Observational studies, that's the thing that we are using a lot in our emergency department. There's some bias for that, but it's very easy to do because we do have a lot of the data in our emergency department. If you want to have a case control studies, it's very simple to do. You analyze, you put in a computer, you want to analyze a disease, and you can analyze the population of patients here. That's some very advantage for that. It's very cheap to do. You can make it very quickly, so you have a young doctor who can work on it. So it's very easy. If you want to follow a very not common disease, you have a cohort study design. It's very hopeful. The problem is prospective. It's very hard to have that because you can have some bias and you can lose some patients that don't want to follow the study. But there are two observational studies that can be very easy to implement in a ED. So just to summarize in this advantage and disadvantage of the observational studies in this board. I don't want what. The thing is you have to focus on is do we have to be prior of the outcome or after the outcome, and we analyze. So we have many studies that we can work on if you want to focus on what is the main advantage of the study we have to do on the research problem. The problem, one of the main problems, the cost. Many studies are controlled and held by the lab, by the final support. That's the thing is, randomized control studies are quite very expensive to do. And some design are very expensive. How many studies we had to stop because we didn't have enough money to control that? So it's a very tough job to find the financial support, because as soon as you have the money for that, the problem is when you have got your paper published, they will say, yeah, but the research program was paid by a company. That's the main objective that we have to focus on. We have the results. Okay, finally we do have the results. What we have learned for that research. Are you sure that the finding will change our practice? That's exactly what we have seen with the use of adrenaline for the cardiac arrest. Can you have the same result in other hospital, in other country, in other system? And then does it open in all the problems? The thing is, it's very important because the result had to answer to the first question. So the take-home message for that is firms and ATULA. Firms test the question, put in a hypothesis for that, replication of that, objectivity, is it predictable or not predictable, and is there any empirical evidence. The other thing is you want to implement the ATULA methods, algorithm, timeline, understand the research program, that the work has been already published or not, is it the experimental methods or research, and what kind of research area. So these acronym is thanks to you for my colleagues from Turkey to help you. We enjoy to do that for you. So, I have not finished. There is no best study design. It will have to be feasible, the cost and the time. And you know, don't forget the first targets. What we have to do, improve health and population. We treat patients, that's not for us. We have to improve for our patient. And last but not least, I would like to thank our Jon Snow. We have a Jon Snow. The Jon Snow is here. It's our Bashar. So I would like to thank you again for a while.
My close friend for the topic, talk. Any question or comment? Okay.
If you have question about the next episode of Game of Thrones, I don't have any information.
Wonderful, thank you very much. The next speaker, Professor Dr. İsa Kılıç Aslan. Chief Editor of Eurasian Journal of Emergency Medicine. Yes, İsa.
Sesini de bağladın mı? Şu an ses geliyor mu? Ne geliyor?
Good morning to my colleagues and dear moderators. First of all, I would like to thank the organization committee for inviting me in here. I would like to present how to get my paper to publish quickly in immersed medicine journals. My colleagues before give some important information about how to write and how to get it published in journals. But in this session, I will give some good information and some clues, some tricks in these presentations. Gazi University Faculty of Medicine from the centrist of Turkey. As you know, publishing a research paper in a peer-reviewed journal is an important issue and activity within the academic community, and it allows you to connect with the other scholars or their other colleagues, and it works in these circulations, and through this network you can easily represent the others network. But getting published is not easy because time is limited, and before take more time, you should know some important clue for this one. Also, you know, it's vital to find a suitable academic journal for your topic and writing style. So that if you find the right journals, you can easily tailor your research paper and you can easily publish these your paper, research paper. Indeed, the conventional track publication tracks involves the four main steps. First of all, you should submit the manuscript, and then peer review process starts. After that, the manuscript revised, and finally, publication process starts. These four steps last maybe more than 1 year, or for the rapid publication, maybe it's within a month you can easily publish your paper. So let's start the stage of these every publishing manuscript. Before publication, you should have a plan. I mean that, first of all, you should follow a special, interesting journals related with your specialized area. Choose a journal and please look at the issues of each journal published in your related to your area. And during this, these should be during the planning of the stage of your study. For the rapid publications, you can prefer open access journals. And when you look at the journal website, the dates should be given for each published paper, and you can look at the time in the journal website. And for the quality of the journals, also the publication index is very important. For example, in here, you know, social science citation index or expanded one is very important. Maybe you can look at the clear rate analytics and you can reach the master journal list so that you can find very good journals through these websites. Also, you should look at the type of paper and what would you conduct in your paper. Some of the journals maybe do not publish case report or survey analytic studies. Please look at the journal websites. I will try to give some special information. This is an article, original article, published in medical, British Medical Journal. And as you see in here, the article received date, revised date, and accept date will be given. If you take these dates, it will give the how quick you send you evaluate the manuscript in this journal. After that, please again, you should look at the journal website, and you will see the author's instruction in this website. Please download the author instructions. It gives all of the clues that the process, how the process going on. And look at the current issues in these websites. Article in press, very important for this one. Prepare the manuscripts according to appropriate study guidelines. For this one, I would like to give some very important website, the Equator Network. It means enhancing the quality and transparency of health research. As you see in here, through these websites link, you can easily reach the Equator. It's very important to write, how to write your journals and papers. As you see in Equator Network, there are some links over here. Which paper, which study do you want to perform? There's some draft for this. For example, randomized clinical trials consorts or systematic reviews, Prisma, or observation studies, stroke drafts for this one. Please download these links and draft this one and easily write down here from here. And for the manuscript preparations, there are some special every steps is very important. I will not give so many information about this because Harun gives so many information about this process. But don't forget, please pay attention for the preparations of the manuscript, because when you give so many pay attention during the manuscript preparations, editors also, reviewers will give more attention for your paper to be published. It's very important to read all the formats, all the structure without any syntax or meaning appropriateness. You can easily publish these manuscripts. Language is very important. Grammar or style, sentence structure very important. Graphics, please take the color, size, it's very important. Facts, details, and author's information should be taken and give more pay attention for this one. One of the most important steps in here, the cover letter. The cover letter should be complete and make a strong pitch. Please look at the website and look at the editors directly, write down the name of the editors, and also give very important information and also ethical, without an ethical conflict and compliance. These are, the manuscript submission checklists. You can easily download in here. It's very easy. Before submission, before submitting a manuscript, you can take this one and check all of these one. In stage 2, there are 3 steps also. You submit your paper, and also you should choose the right journal for the submission, and strengthening your submission is very important. During the submission of your paper, I mean that you prepare all of the manuscript without any problems. You have gotten a plan to publish in this journal. But later, maybe you can change your mind, and also you should also look at what the other journals alternatives. At that time point, please, very important, ask a colleague or professor to review your research paper. It's very important. Your professor or your colleagues can edit your paper for grammatical errors or spelling errors or typos, clarity and the conciseness of your manuscript. They can also verify your content. Also, at least 2 or 3 people can help you for the reviewing process at this stage. But don't forget, at least one of them should be non-expert in the major topic. After that, submit your article when you feel it is ready to go. Again, please go to the journal website, go to the author's guideline, and download the author's instructions. Again, you will check all of these one, and when you satisfied your papers meet all of the criteria for the author's instructions, then start to submit your manuscripts. Most of the journals allow online submissions, but while others prefer a hard copy, but it's very little. Don't forget, you should submit your article or your paper to only one journal at a time. These are ethical problems, and they may be very problematic for you. And also, work your way down your list and at a time as needed. When submitting online, please use your university or personal email account. Through this one, the acceptance rate of your publication or your articles can be more easy. And what are the problem with the choosing the or selection the right journal for your submissions? There are also some special checklists for this one. I mean that, first of all, you should look at the journals. And when you choose journals, journals should also choose you. And when you engaged, you should send the paper. But at this point, don't forget, choosing the right journal for submission is similar to get married. At these positions, if you don't find the right journals, the marriage can be very terrible. So please, at this position, I will give some recommendation for you. Be aware of predator or bogus publishers. I think Professor Özgür will give more information about the predators and bogus publishers. So I will pass this one, but I would like to recommend two important internet websites for this one. The Director of Open Access Journals, also the Open Access Scholarly Publisher Associations. Please look at this one. Also, we have two more journal suggestions to find the right journal for your articles. The first one and most popular one, from the Elsevier. When you go to the Elsevier websites, you can easily find this web page, journal finder in here. I gave a sample for this one, geriatric neglect and abuse in university departments. And these websites offers some special journals from their databases and Journal of American Medical Associations, and you can easily follow the impact factor, speed, site score, option, everything. You can, what you want, which is important for you, you can choose the right journal for at that point. Similar one from the Springer, journal suggestor program in here. You can also find through the Springer. The other website I would like to recommend is the cables. Please note at this one. In this cables.com, there are some lists in here, white list and black lists. If you want the journal, please look at please search in this website which area or which is your journal is at this point. For the last one, how would you strengthen your submissions? After submissions, don't panic when you get the journal's initial response, because only a very few portion article submissions get an immediately accepted reply from a peer-reviewed journal. If you get directly accepted, please be cautious. If you don't get one of these, go celebrate, but otherwise only deal with the reply you get. After that is accept with the revisions, revise or resubmit, reject or submit, and direct rejections can occur. But if you don't reject it and some recommendation with you, please embrace reviewers' comments as constructive criticism. You should be very polite for this, for every comment that given by the reviewers. And lastly, for the importance of these sessions, the tips from Emerging Medicine Journal for the rapid publications. These are some publishers, also some journals that evaluate the articles submission systems very easy and very fast. As you see, the Journal of American medical associations easily evaluate your manuscript and give the response. First one, for the rapid publication tips, the first one, the rapid publication tract. In some special issue, every journal can give some clue for this one. Please look at the publishing cost, it may be some problems. Also, for the journal website, total time to publication is important. Every article, after or in the first page of the article, you can see the time to publications process. Look at the peer review process and also type of peer reviewer. And look at the overall journal credibility. Contact the editorial board members or authors if there's a debate for you or there's a problem with you. And after then, for the consult a director or checklist. For this one, please think, check, submit checklist to ensure the reliability of the journal and prepare a rapid publication. But during all these submission process, don't give any pressure to the editors or journals. Because where you publish is even more important than how soon you publish your paper. And some pairs for this one, for the emergency medicine journals. When you look at the Web of Science, for the 2017 Journal Citation Report, the first one is an analysis of emergency medicines with an impact factor of 4.68, and later academic emergency medicines and the other ones. When you look at the Science Citation Index category, there are 4 journals related with the emergency medicines. Annals of Emergency Medicine is also the first rank, academic emergency medicines, emergency medicine journal, and the recitations with importance as SGI journals. What about the SGI expanded journals? When you look at through these emergency medicine category, there are 29 journals you can easily find these SGI expanded journal lists. And when you look at these 29 journals, the newly entered SGI expanded journal, you will see World Journal of Emergency Medicine. I'm sorry. In the 28th rank. I am the past editors of Eurasian Journal of Emergency Medicines, and our first cover, and the similar one, the Annals of Emergency Medicines. We got so many expectations from our reviewers, also our authors. Thank you very much. There are some samples of the articles published in these special journals in here. You can see what you realize that, and the dates, submission dates, all of them you can see in here. And for the emergency medicine journal, also the impact factor really going up, and also the time in here. And lastly, when you cannot publish your paper or your article in the Science Citation Index Expand or other one, maybe you can send your paper to emerging SGI journals. Eurasian Journal of Emergency Medicines is indexing emerging source citation index. I'm sorry. Don't forget. And as a summary, please, before sending our submission process, think check, submit. And when you do this all the time, don't forget it will be very easy to publish your article in specific journals. Vlogs. Is there any contribution or question? Thanks very much.
Do we have any question? Yeah, please take the microphone.
Hello, Dr. Mücahit Avcı from Aydın. I know it will be a strange question, but I want to ask. Is the author's previous studies important for the editors? I mean, does the editor research the author's previous studies? For example, one guy has 10 papers in the PubMed and other guy has 100 paper article in PubMed. Is this issue impact to editor's decision?
Indeed, for me, I want to be a totally blind all of the authors. I am totally blind. Will read all of the papers without looking the authors' names. So it's not important, but when the authors publish more than 100 papers, he or she knows very well how to write the article. So you can easily understand this is well designed or well presented articles. So I think there's a positive discrimination for this one. But I think for the first authors that you cannot publish before, you can easily accept your article in a very high range or impact factor journals. It depends how you prepare your manuscript or your articles well.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe you can attribute.
Yeah, I would like to add a comment. It's a very, very good question. To be honest, exactly the same reply. We have a lot of colleagues where they are really well specialized how to write an article. And I have seen a colleague very young. She was just published a short quote in the New England Journal of Medicine, but she does have understood exactly how we can write a good paper. That's the only thing, and that's the thing we have to learn. Thank you. So it's a privilege to introduce the last speaker of the session at the Congress. Is Dr. Özgür Sukut from Istanbul. He's an assistant professor of emergency medicine.
Mr. President and dear participants, firstly, I want to thank the valuable citation to Professor Isa about my topic. I would like to present the topic regarding is broadcasting the main purpose. In the beginning, I want to mention the importance of this issue because it is important for academics, for us, for researchers. Publishing original research is critical to academic and professional achievement, as you know. When selecting this journal to which you will submit your work, it is important to consider the options very carefully. It's estimated that around 10,000 journals within 13,000 academic journals employ predatory journals. Predatory journals, what does it mean, predatory journals? Predatory journals, also known as incredible journals, fake journals, and pseudo journals, or shooter journals. It's a lot of names. And the researchers should be avoided from such journals at all costs. A longitudinal study of article volumes and publishing market characteristic estimated 8,000 active predatory journals with total articles increasing from 53,000 in 2010 to 420,000 in 2014. This is estimated. It has been stated in this study, 3/4 of authors were from Asia and Africa countries. Yes, I tried to consider how we think is broadcasting the main purpose. So I decided to ask the question and answer it. If your answer to this question is yes, so you may submit your manuscript to one of the predatory journals, because this is the fastest and easiest way of publishing your article. But if you choose credible journals, to publish your research, then you should expect a difficult processing, because the processing includes peer review, revisions, and even rejections. But predatory journals, it is easy, safe, and they adore their research, rating. Hello. Over the past decade, a group of scholarly journals have proliferated that have become known as predatory journals, produced by predatory publishers. Predatory refers to the fact that these entities prey on academics for financial profit via article processing charts for open access articles, but without meeting scientific publishing standard. In example, peer review, clinical and copy editing, quality assurance, correction, retractions, and archiving. Predatory journals exploit the need for academics and research to publish their work. As you know, they use questionable business tactics such as charging the author to publish, but they do not provide the professional services of a reputable academic journal. This means legitimate academic journal. The purpose of predatory journals is solely to make money for the owners from author fees. In summary, these journals achieve most of the process in place that legitimate journals use to meet scholarly meeting publishing standards. If your answer is no to this question, so definitely, exactly, choose legitimate journals to submit your article. Most academics want their work to be published in legitimate journals, because legitimate journals are credible journals, are reputable journals. Unfortunately, the tremendous proliferation of journals, both legitimate and predatory, makes it increasingly difficult to identify predatory journals. It is hard to identify the predatory journals, or distinguish the predatory journals from the legitimate journals. A journal that an author has never heard of might be a legitimate journal, a legitimate new journal. Although predatory journals may claim to conduct peer review and mimic the structure of legitimate journals, they publish all or most submitted material without external peer review. They do not follow, as I mentioned, standard policies advocated by organizations such as here listed, World Association of Medical Editors, it is important to verify the journal, Committee on Publication Ethics, International Committee of Medical Journal Editors, and Council of Science Editors. It is important to substantial efforts to assist researchers in distinguishing predatory from legitimate journals. These include, firstly, Beall's list. The second one is Directory of Open Access Journals. Beall list of potential predatory journals, open access publisher or journals can be accessed from this website. The Beall's is a librarian. The name of Beall is Jeffrey Beall. Jeffrey Beall, in fact, is a librarian, and he listed some journals, and these lists were alarmingly lengthy, with 1,155 predatory publishers and 1,294 predatory journals being listed as January 3, 2017. You can access this original list from this website. While the purpose of Beall list was to identify predatory journals, the Directory of Open Access Journals has the converse purpose of identifying legitimate open access journals. The directory aims to be comprehensive and cover all open access academic journals that use an appropriate quality control system. As of January 5, 2017, DOAG included 9,456 journals from 128 countries. However, the DOAG is not a comprehensive list of all legitimate open access journals. If your work is published in the Directory of Open Access Journals, you can trust it is a legitimate journal. But the journals, a journal that is not listed, it does not mean it should not be assumed to be illegitimate or predatory. This is the important issue. There is a list of signs that a journal may be predatory. Firstly, many predatory journals are open access and require fees. Quality is of substantial concern, poor or no editing, and poor or no peer review. Unethical business practices such as offering services not as advertised, making false claims about impact factors of indexing, and failure to adhere to accepted standards of scholarly publishing and aggressive solicitation of manuscripts. Why should we avoid publishing our research in a predatory journals? There are a number of possible consequences to publishing in a predatory journals. These include, firstly, your published work is not protected. The second one, your work will receive poor or no peer review. And also work could disappear, or you could lose access if the journal is dissolved. It may be difficult for others or other researchers to find your work, and if it is found, academics may be reluctant to cite it. How can we protect ourselves? How can you protect yourself and your research from the predatory journals? There's a number of items. Firstly, be very careful of emails from unknown source that invite manuscript submission and promise you rapid publication for a fee. Check out Bill's list of suspected open access publishers and journals. This is 2010 to 2017, 1,155 predatory publishers and predatory journals, 1,294 predatory journals are cited. Browse the directory of open access journals for journals believed to be authentic. These journals, the number of these journals are approximately 10,000 journals from 128 countries. Yes, and use the thing, check and submit. Look for a street mailing address for the publisher and even a telephone number. Contact the editor, if necessary, in chief for one-on-one exchange for sensible validation. Contact some listed member of the editorial board to assess legitimacy. Do not give permission regarding your email name to be listed as a member of an editorial board unless you have verified the legitimacy of the publication. It has been reported that 45% of 55 open access journals in emergency medicine field were likely predatory. If you have any doubts about a journal's reputability, consult with a librarian. Librarian is an important staff in universities. Librarians, because librarians are trained to know the publishing process, and these are employed by universities work with a wide variety of academic journals daily. Also, consult with your colleagues, faculty member or mentor. Their experiences can help you to guide your way. Some open access journals charge authors a fee called an article processing charge. Open access journals still adhere, but your work is included when included in an open access journal. This does not mean predatory, because most of the journals are included in open access. Open access journals still adhere to the rigors of scholarly publishing by offering peer review by professionals in this field. Finally, how can we guide ourselves for evaluating journals and publishing? There is some clues. Firstly, in the journal website, the section of about the journals, read carefully the section of about the journal. Discover peer-reviewed journals using library search tools, as mentioned by Professor Isa. Examine the aims and scope. Are they, and ask yourself, are they appropriate for your research? Review past issues of the journal. Does the content of the journal look topical and credible? Are the authors known to you? And the other questions, does the website provide complete contact information? For example, for instance, an email, street address, working phone number. Does it have a valid online ISSN? A journal website should say where it is indexed. Indexing is an important issue. Journals are disseminated via research databases, for example, academic abstracting and indexing services such as IGST or PubMed, EBSCOhot, ProQuest, even Google Scholar. Thank you for listening and patience.
Thank you. Very interesting presentation. Do we have any question? I've got a question for the audience. How many of you did receive this kind of mail to asking you to publish your research? Yeah? No? It's one of the main problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for everybody. We finished the whole section, all Congress. We will start the closing ceremony after 1 or 2 minutes. Okay? Thank you very much for all. Dördüncü gündeyiz. Bugün 4 günlük bir tempo. Gerçekten son ana kadar aramızda kalmanızdan dolayı çok mutluyuz, gururluyuz. Ve biliyorsunuz çok dolu bir program geçirdik. Bundan sonra da bu programlarımızı, kongrelerimizi daha ileriye taşıyacağız. Bizim aramızda çok değerli YUSEM Başkanımız Sayın Luis Garcia da gitmeden önce kapanış konuşmasını kendisine takdim ediyorum. O size hitap edecek. Daha sonra ben tekrar mikrofonu devam edeceğim.
Thank you very much for allowing me to come here to the stage in this clothes, and I was not thinking that I have to say anything in the closing ceremony. I really appreciate the invitation that the organizers have done to USEM. USEM is really pleased to collaborate with the organization of this type of events. As the previous speakers have been commenting, each year the event is better and better, and we hope next year we are going to be with you here and we will collaborate in this marvelous annual event. USEM is always going to be supporting you in this, and we hope that it's not only going to be this, we are going to be involved in other things together. So thank you very much for your invitation, and we hope that we are going to see each other next year here, celebrating a great Congress.
Değerli arkadaşlar, bu 4 günlük 9 salonda olan, gece 9'a 10'a kadar süren, her anını değerlendirmeye çalıştığımız kongreyi hep birlikte başardık. Son ana kadar yanımızda kaldığınız için, son ana kadar bizimle birlikte olduğunuz için çok teşekkür ediyorum. Biz büyük bir enerjiyle bunu yapıyoruz. Bakın dün gece Zeynep Hanım'la gece 1'e doğru gelecek kongrenin çalışmalarını planlamaya başladık. Çünkü yönetim kurulu toplantımız 12.30'da bitti gece. Sadece yönetim kurulu değil, dergi toplanıyor bir tarafa, yeterlilik kurulu bir tarafta toplanıyor. Dolayısıyla bu kadar yoğun bir tempoda geçirdik kongreyi ve biz hedeflerimize ulaştık. Yapmak istediğimiz şeyleri gerçekleştirdik. Ama biz hep daha yukarıya gitmeye çalışıyoruz. Bir sonraki kongrede bu yüksek atlama. Hep çıtayı daha yükseğe, rekoru daha yukarıya taşımaya çalışıyoruz. Bir aile gibi olduk. Özellikle international aile. Roger Dickerson sürekli yanımızda. Eric Revel sürekli yanımızda. Şimdi bunlara Meksika'dan Carlos eklendi. Kanada'dan Jim McEwen hep yanımızda. Biz büyük bir global aile haline gelmeye devam ediyoruz. Burada yaptığımız her işlem uluslararası arenada ses getiriyor. Biz sadece lokal bir organizasyon yapmıyoruz. Kıtalar arası bir yapıya bölünmüş durumdayız. Yıl boyunca 300'ü aşkın aktivasyonumuz var ve gerçekten bunu birçok kişi duyduğunda bunun ne kadar yani inanılamayacak bir şey olduğunu söylüyor. Şimdi sizden beklentimiz şu, lütfen bu dev yapının altına girerek siz de omuzlarınıza alın. Herkes o bir şey alıyor, daha fazla girin. Biz de yükün altına ne kadar çok girersen o kadar çok değerlisin. Ve bu çalışmalarımızın karşılığını hayatınızda mutlaka bir şekilde alacaksınız. Bu kadar büyük çalışmaları daha büyük ekiplerle yapmak gerekiyor. Dolayısıyla bu kongrede biz buna çok dikkat ediyoruz. Ve geleceğe taşımak istediğimiz veya geleceğe beraber yürüyeceğimiz kişileri bu kongrede belirliyoruz. Keşfetmeye çalışıyoruz. Biz bu kongrenin başlangıcında başlığı ne atmıştık? Bir hatırla. Afşin sen önündesin değil mi? Başlığı hatırlıyor musun? Ön sözün başlığı. Dikkat ölçüyoruz. Geleceğe yürüyüş. Geleceğe yürüyüş. Biz hep birlikte acil tıbbın geleceğine birlikte yürüyeceğiz. İnşallah. Onun için de hepinizden alacağımız güce, enerjiye ihtiyacımız var. Ya beni hoca aramıyor, ya ben burada etkili değilim, ya ben burada yok. Böyle bir şey yok. İkincisi biz sağ bek istemiyoruz arkadaşlar. Sağ bek istemiyoruz. Biz orta saha oyuncusu istiyoruz. Ya da forvet istiyoruz. Sağ bek nedir? Ya bunu yakala, görevini yap. Ya görev değil ya, tamam ben sana söyleyeceğim, o görevi yap. Bu adamı oradan geçirme, onu istemiyoruz. Sen oyun kur, oyun. Bana oyun kuracak eleman lazım. Ben sağ beki ne yapayım? Sağ bek dünyada bir sürü var. Ama oyun kurucu bulamıyoruz. Alex gitti sonra ne oldu Fener'in hali görüyorsunuz yani. Oyun kurucu yok yani. Oyun kuruculara ihtiyacımız var. Sağ beklerimizi her yerde bulabiliriz. Onun için sizden ricam oyun kurun. Oyun kuracak, tabi bunu yanlış manada anlamayın yani. Oyun kuracak elemanlara ihtiyacımız var. Dergimiz, televizyonumuz, gazetemiz hepsi sizi bekliyor. Lütfen sadece basit bir dernek mentalitesiyle bu işi düşünmeyin. Dev, vizyonu büyük, örnek, lider bir kuruluş olarak düşünün bizim yapımızı. Ve bu lider yapıda ne kadar çok görev almak isterseniz o kadar çok önünüzü açacağımızı bilin. Son ana kadar bizimle berabersiniz, yola gideceksiniz. Yola gitmeden önce adet üzere baskın seçim yapıyoruz. Espri yapıyoruz. Benim işim. Yani soruyorlar seçim var mı? Ya seçim yok, seçimin bir zamanı var. Zamanı gelince size açıklayacağız. Dolayısıyla sormayın, genel toplantımızda korkmayın. Ama ibra istiyoruz. Bizi ibra ediyor musunuz? Yani ibra, yani güven oyu veriyor musunuz? Bak güzel yaptınız bu kongreyi diyor musunuz? Biz hep birlikte bu kongreyi çok güzel yaptık. Hepinize çok teşekkür ediyorum ama şunu istiyorum. Lütfen şöyle bak biz burada diyorum ya gece başladı. Ben şimdi eve gideceğim belki yarın, bilmiyorum. Dönüş uçağımı daha onu bile ayarlayamadım ama şey var. Cuma günü yoğun bakım kursumuz var Ankara Şehir Hastanesi'nde. Oraya gideceğiz. Cuma, cumartesi. Yani bizim 3 gün dinlenme, 4 gün boş kalma gibi bir şeyimiz yok. Şansımız yok. Burada şunu da söylemek istiyorum. Özellikle yabancı dinleyici arkadaşlarımız da var. Biz uluslararası üye de kabul ediyoruz. ERİK'in son dersini kaçırmayacaktınız. ATÜDER'e yaptığı çok güzel bir jest vardı değil mi? ATÜDER görenler oldu. Sosyal medyada göreceksiniz. Yani bu kadar bizim içimizden biri olmuş artık konuşmacılarımız. ERİK'e de bu yüzden özellikle bir alkış rica ediyorum. Gelecek günün sekreteri. Please for ERİK. And Roger Dickerson. Biliyorsunuz en renkli sunum herhalde Roger Dickerson'ı da bu yüzden alkışlayalım. Arkadaşlar, hepinize başarılı, güzel bir gelecek, uzun, başarılı, sağlıklı bir ömür dilerim. Yolunuz açık olsun. Dışarıdan geçerken kitap alabilirsiniz. Kitap almayanlar kitap alsınlar. Bu büyük ailenin fertleri olarak hepimiz daha ileriye birlikte yürümeye devam edeceğiz. Saati şimdi mi vermiştik? Niye geliyorsun? Yok devam edin. Arkadaşlar buyurun hepiniz gelenler oldu da onun için söylüyorum. Ben bitirmek üzereyim. Hepinize iyi yolculuklar diliyorum. Bana her zaman ulaşabilirsiniz. Yönetim kurulumuza her zaman ulaşabilirsiniz. Büyük bir ailenin ferdi olmaktan, sizinle birlikte çalışmaktan, sizinle aldığımız bu enerjiyi büyük bir hizmete dönüştürmekten çok mutluyuz. Hepinize iyi günler ve emanet olun.